Welcome back to the Next Gen Prophets podcast, and I'm your host, your pastor, Jessica Toach. Now, before we get started on today's podcast, I want to give some honor to my apostles, Craig and Colette. Thank you so much for inviting me onto this podcast. It is such an honor. And I also want to thank you, Michael and Deborah, for giving me a warm welcome and to be fellow champions that I get to work and run alongside. It is such an honor to be connected with such phenomenal and powerful prophets and apostles that we can serve together. Now, for today's podcast, I'm going to tell on myself a little bit here because as a pastor, I'm going to teach you guys the secret on how to win your pastor's heart. Now, when I say win your pastor's heart, what I mean is to get his ear and his attention to the point where he recognizes you and gives you a place, a platform to begin building alongside him. Now, you see, as a pastor in Fivefold Ministry Campus, I often get the opportunity to connect with really strong prophets. Now, you see, in a ministry that is full of prophets and teachers, there are certain ones that begin to stand out from everybody else. And it is these prophets that begin to show good character, that begin to show the nature of being a next-gen prophet that I begin to recognize and pull in closer. Because you see, as a pastor, I begin to discern the difference between the sheep and the goats. I begin to discern those who are not even goats or sheep at all, but those who are calling out to be shepherds, those who God is drawing out from the flock to stand and to be the leader. And I want you to recognize today that you are not just a sheep, you're not a goat, but God's calling you to stand alongside your pastor. He's calling you to stand along and to be a champion along with him. And as a pastor, this is what we are looking for, to see if you are qualified and if you're ready to handle the load of this flock. Because being a pastor, we often deal with a lot of backbiting. We deal with a lot of betrayal. We deal with a lot of issues that people put on us, and it's heavy, and we know how heavy the load is. So we're not just going to entrust any old whippersnapper to just come on in to the fold and to begin leading God's people, because we know that one little nip of that sheep at his heel, and he will come tumbling down and fall on other sheep. And we got to protect not only the flock, but also those who God is calling to be champions and to be the co-pastors. So, what is this one thing that is going to win the heart of your pastor, to win the trust of your pastor? It's this one thing: commitment. Now, you see, as a prophet, you're already like, well, my heart is committed here. God planted me here. God told me I got to be here. So I'm committed whether I like it or not. Yes, you're seeing that from a very prophetic point of view. But I need you to take a moment here, prophets, with me, and take a moment to step back. You see, as a prophet, you run, and your whole bloodline is obedience. It's about obeying and to standing in the obedience of God. But you see, a pastor is to stay in the heartbeat of God. And they're not just looking for any blind old obedience. They're looking for commitment. They're looking for heart. They're looking for somebody they can trust and somebody that will run alongside them. They don't want just anybody to do what they're told. You see, a good trained sheep can do what it's told. But a pastor is one that rises above and takes care and nurtures and creates an environment for growth. And as a prophet, when you come into this environment, you recognize what the pastor is doing, and you begin to commit not only to the work, but to the people, to the pastor. You begin to show that commitment to your pastor. Now, is it fair that you have to jump through all these hoops? Maybe not, but I want to tell you this, that it is God's order. How do I know that? Why am I saying that? Because in James 1, verses 12, it says, "Blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him." What is this talking about? Okay, yes, it's talking about salvation, but I want to talk about this. He who endures temptation. He's a blessed man. This man who has gone through, who is in the Lord, who's endured the challenges, who has proven himself, is given the crown. Now, what's the crown? The crown is a symbolism of authority, right? Who gets a crown? Kings get a crown. Princes get a crown. Queens get a crown. Lords and bishops get crowns. Crowns is a symbol of authority. Crown is a position where the Lord and the people around you recognize your position and respect you according to that position. Now here, it's saying that when you endure, when you are challenged, when you are tested, the Lord gives you a crown. The Lord gives you authority, a position for you to hold, and that is recognized by God and man. And who gives the crown? Those who God has put in leadership position over us. Those who God has anointed, those who God has positioned for such a time as this to help elevate you to your place. In other words, your leader, your apostle, your pastor. These people in your life hold the crown to place on your head, and they won't place that crown on your head until you qualify. Why? Because if you don't qualify, it will hurt you. It's a heavy load to wear that crown. You know that saying, heavy is the head that wears the crown? Yes, for those in leadership, you know exactly what that means. It's a heavy load, and you need to be ready. So, I have 3 signs that you are committed to your pastor. And the sign number 1 is that you love his sheep. You see, when Jesus was talking to Peter, he said, "Do you love me?" He said, "Yes, Lord." And he asked him again and again, "Do you love me?" And he's like, "Yes, I love you." "Then feed my sheep." If you truly want to show the heart of your pastor and show the love of the Lord in this ministry, then love his people. Love his sheep. Because when you love them, you don't just tolerate them. You don't just come to serve them. But when you love them, you will go over and above the act of service. You'll go over and above your daily chores and what you need to, and just get in, pray, avoid the meet and greet in the middle of the service. And why, Pastor, do we have to stop right before we're about to preach so we can shake somebody's hand? Why do we got to do this? When you get over that, and you realize it's an opportunity to love and connect with God's people, you begin to show that you are committed to the people God has placed in this church. And your pastor will recognize it. You see, as a pastor, when I'm ministering, I know when a champion is in the rising. Because when I'm ministering with them, they said, "You know, this prophet told me the same thing. Oh, you know, so-and-so from church, from here? Yeah, they told me the same thing." And I look and see how everybody else in the membership connect to that one prophet, connect to that one person, that one champion God is raising up. When I see them begin building up others, I know that I have a champion in my group that I need to pay attention to. Sign number 2, you're aligned with the ministry vision. Now, let me make it clear. You're not being aligned with the pastor and what he thinks and what he wants. No, you're aligned with the vision. You see, a pastor is in love with the vision God has given him, with the ministry God has given him. Why? Because the ministry is what he's hoping to accomplish, and it is his heart. If you're in line with the pastor's vision, you're in line with the pastor. Because the pastor's vision is the heartbeat of his DNA. It's the expression of who he is. If his vision is to create a community, to bring everybody to salvation, or to feed and to have nobody lacking, then you know your pastor and you know what he wants and you're in line with him. You need to identify the pastor's vision. What is the one thing that they always say every Sunday? What is the one thing that your pastor can't stop talking about? Is it talking about the lost? Is it talking about the hurt and broken? Is it talking about the orphans in your community, the homeless? What is the one thing that your pastor in different shapes and forms always talks about? That's his vision. If you want to show that you are committed to this pastor, to the work, get committed to his vision and let his passion be your passion. Sign number 3, be consistently dressed for service. What does this mean? Always be ready and available. You see, I want to tell you about a champion that I began to pull in to the ranks in Fivefold Ministry Campus. Now, some of you may have met her, especially if you've gone to the nextgenprophets.org and you've gone to the live chat option and you've chatted any one of our prophets. You would have met Jodiah. Now, Jodiah started off as one of the students in prophetic school, and she was so committed that once she finished her training, she couldn't be done with us, that she came over to Fivefold Ministry Campus to learn more of this pastoral side. And I got the privilege to work and train with her. And whenever I started one of my classes, I always felt her in the room. Whenever I entered in and I got ready to preach, I would make eye contact with her and I felt her there. I couldn't describe it. I couldn't make quite words to it, but I knew she was there and I always felt her at my back. I always felt her presence supporting and lifting me up. And I'm like, what is with this girl? So I threw her a couple tests. I would just randomly ask her to pray for the group. I would randomly get her to explain a principle because she was in the prophetic school, so she knew all of the prophetic principles like the back of her hand. So I'd throw her a couple tests and see if she could handle it. And she passed it with flying colors. When I threw a pop quiz her way and I talked to her like, okay, so what kind of dream is this, Jodiah? Is this a prophetic or is this an internal prophetic or an external dream? She read the Dreams and Visions book, went through the course and could tell me right off the bat, oh, this is an internal prophetic dream and this is what the dream means. I said, I got a champion in my group. Because every time I needed her, every time I needed a prophet at my back and there was none other available and I asked for her, she always was dressed for service. She always came early to the meetings. She always came prayed up. She always came ready to contribute something. She didn't expect me to feed her and do everything for her, but she came ready to give. And that's how I knew I had a champion in my core. And it was from there I took her and said, hey, apostles, we got a champion here. I would like to pull her in closer. And would you know it, from her taking that first step in campus, from being that support there and just joining the meetings, she now is a part of our Next Gen Prophets team and represents us wherever she goes. Guys, this is your inheritance. And I want to give you the secret. Again, a pastor is not so concerned about what your obedience is as much as where your heart lies. If your heart is lined with the people, with the vision, and with what God is doing in this work, prophet, you're going to win your pastor over, you're going to win your apostle over, and you're going to build. You're going to establish a kingdom. You're going to establish patterns and structures that will remain the test of time. Why? Because a next-gen prophet like you decided to raise up another, and God will see that and will give you the crown and raise you higher and higher and continue to increase your influence. Now, if you need to connect with a pastor or you're at loggerheads with your pastor, because prophets have a rep for saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, and then the pastor takes it the wrong way and reads too much into it. Yes, it's a constant problem that we have. But if you need help and you need to learn how to connect with this crazy pastor of yours that just doesn't understand you, my prophetic tribe, reach out. Look, you're not the only prophet that is out there that has had struggles with his pastor. In fact, I want to give you some testimonies. We've had many of our prophets that came in that were at loggerheads with their pastor, loggerheads with their apostle, but then the Lord, through training, through perspective, began to align them in such a way that we have seen over 20 prophets come in alignment with their leader and begin building and establishing together a bond of trust and mutual respect bred through the challenges they faced. This is your inheritance, and this is yours. And we want to offer it to you. So join our prophetic tribe. Get connected so that we can equip the body together. Come on, Next Gen Prophets. Let's bring this new move to pass. See you next week.